Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So this is CPE 517-WS Digital and Computer System Architecture, Lecture 5, Part 3, which is probably the most important part of this lecture. Excuse me. Cache associativity. So we have mentioned at the very beginning saying that the gap between the CPU and the GPU and the memory is very large. It's getting larger, right? Thousand times. So how do we bridge the gap? We use a smaller, faster memory component on CPU. That is a cache. Well, then we said cache is small and we have to take care of locality. Then how do we use cache? There are 4 questions. Where can a block be placed in the cache? How is the block found if it is in the cache? Which block should be replaced on a miss? What happens on a write? How do we use cache in these 4 scenarios? We're going to clarify all of them in this lecture. Okay. Basically, block placement, block identification, block replacement, and writing strategy. Okay, so first, block placement. Where should we place a block? Okay, assuming right now we have 8 blocks in the cache. One block is like 64 bytes, continuous bytes. See here. So block 0 is 64 bytes. Block 1, 64 bytes. So it's basically 0 to 63 bytes. And then 64 to 127 bytes, etc., etc. So we can figure out from 0 to 7 blocks of the cache. And then how do we place the block of the memory in the cache? For example, we have to cache block 12 to this cache. How do we place it? There are typically 2 ways. First is direct mapped, and second is n-way set associativity, okay? So for direct map, it's like every block is one unique set or one unique place for us to cache the block. Then how do we do that is basically the block number of the memory, like block 12 module 8, the number of blocks, and then the remainder is the location for us to place this specific block in the cache. For instance, 12 module 8, and the remainder is 4. So then we say, okay, block 12 from the memory gonna be placed at block 4. This is very straightforward. Well, another way is n-way set associativity. N-way set associativity means we do not treat one block as an individual or independent place of caching. Basically, excuse me, we treat the continuous blocks like for instance, in this case, 2-way associativity means we treat 2 continuous blocks as one unique place for caching. Like block 0 and 1 is one place, block 2 and 3 is another set, block 4 and 5 is one set, block 6 and 7 is the last set. Then in this case, we want to place block 12 in this cache. What are we going to do is we're going to do 12 module 4 and the remainder is 0. So we say in this set, either block can be used to cache this memory 12 block, okay? This is actually very important for replacement. For instance, if in this set, any of these blocks are very hotly used, right? Like popularly used. If we replace either of them out would be a problem, then we give it a bigger block gonna be have less chance to swap those popular blocks out? Well, in this direct map case, if block 12 of the memory is a miss in cache, then we have to swap this block out. Okay, so in another way, direct map can be considered as a one-way set associative design, right? So it's like you have in total 8 sets, and every set contains one block. In this two-way, you have in total 4 sets. Every set contains 2 blocks. You can also have 4-way, so that means you partition the entire cache into 2 blocks, right? Like here. Okay, this is one set. This is another set. 2 sets. Okay, and then you have this set is the set 0, and this is set 1. Then you can decide which set to contain this block of interest, and in this set you can use any of those blocks to contain to hold this block. Then it's a lower chance of conflict, right? But we're going to discuss with you later. And we set associativity when the number of blocks in one set is getting more, then your design complexity, the circuits or electronics going to be more complicated. Okay. Okay. How to check if a cached block is the block of interest or the block identification, right? Like whether this block is the block we need. For instance, come back, okay, here. So in the direct map, both, let's see, a couple blocks can be mapped into the block 4, right, of the memory. For instance, block 4 can go here. And then block 12 can go here. Then we have block 20, right? And then we have 28. And then, so you can see there's more than one block, because the reason is that the cache is small, right? Cache is smaller than memory. So there must be the case, typically the case, that more than one block of the memory can be mapped to the same block of the cache, right? So then we have to identify whether this block is actually block 12. Right? We have to say, okay, this block is block 12. Okay, it's not the other blocks. That's what we mean by block identification. Okay. Okay, move on. So how do we identify whether the block is the block of interest? We need to use tag, which is like the name comes from a tag of your car vehicle. We can remember it in that way. So you have the specific tag of your car that uniquely identify this is the registered vehicle, right? So here is the same. When you get that specific block from the cache, that specific block also contains a tag. You can use that tag to compare against the memory's tag number, right? And so here we can tell you the entire, for instance, if this is like 0 to 31, then there are some bits used for, like in that specific 64 bytes, which byte is of your interest, right? And then we have this index for us to decide which set we should map. And then the most significant bits of the tag of the entire address is used as the tag to compare whether this block contains the block of interest. So as you can see here, when we increase the set associativity, basically we're shrinking the index, and then we're going to have more larger tag, right? This is second quote. This is very important. If you cannot get it, please definitely talk to me or try to find a way to clarify that if you need my help, okay? All right, so then we go to the very important way of accessing cache, okay? Assuming, all right, assuming we have this address coming, this entire address, okay? Then we want to, as what we showed in the prior slide, we want to find first the set of interest. If it's a direct map, then the set is a single block. So we're going to use the index to figure out the set, assume this is the set. And then we have to compare the tag, right? T is the tag. We're going to compare the tag and see if this really caches the block of interest. If it is, then we also want to see whether this is valid. It's like the block is cached and valid. If it is, then we access the data. And then use the offset in that specific 64 bytes. We know, oh, it's like that specific offset, okay? Well, this problem gets very complicated. If we go to set associative, all right? But before we go to set associative, let's go to the fully associative mapping, which means we only have a single set, or all the blocks. The block can be of the memory, each block of the memory can be mapped to all the blocks of the cache. In that case, how can we quickly figure out whether each block contains the data of interest? Then we have to have a lot of wheres. You see here, we only need a single, like a comparison operator and gate, right? Here, we have to have many comparison operator or circuit and then AND gate. Why? Because when the tag comes in, we have to compare the tag to all the blocks. Why? You may say, why? Okay. The reason is that because we have to, in a very short period of time, because cache is for fast access, right? So we cannot say, okay, I can go to the block 1 and then compare whether this is the block of interest and then go to block 2 and say whether this is the block of interest and then go to block 3. That wouldn't work. Why? Because that's going to make your cache access very time consuming. So instead, what we do is we just let the tag comparison of the entire set to be done in a single cycle. Okay. Since right now we have all these blocks as in one cycle, as in one set, excuse me, then we have to do the comparison of all the tags in single shot. So we have to have that many block number of many comparators and then valid bits with the comparators goes to the AND gate and see whether it's valid as well as the tag of interest, right? Once we know this, and then we know, oh, there must be one of them caches the block, then we use that specific block of the cache to retrieve the data, and then use the offset to retrieve the data from that specific block. Let's see. Across all of them, we figured out probably this one. The second one contains the block of interest. Then we're gonna retrieve the data, is a multiplexer to retrieve the data and put it out here. Okay, this is gonna be valid. Well, there are also chances that no cache blocks contains this block of interest. Then we mean we say there's a cache miss. Okay. So the takeaway from this design is that we need to compare all the tags simultaneously because of the cycle or latency requirement of the cache. Okay, once we have the full set associativity in our mind, then I think when it goes to set associative mapping, it becomes easier. Why? Because assuming you have two-way set associativity, then you only need to compare. You just divide this cache block, the entire cache into two tables, and then you do the same set, right? These two cache blocks falls in the same set, assuming. Then we compare the tag of these two blocks of the same set, like what blocks of the same set in parallel, right? This is basically literally two, okay? Because this is a two-way set associativity in this example. Then also, as well as the valid bits, right? And then we figure out which block of the set contains the data of interest. Then we retrieve that specific data block out here, and then use the offset to identify the block, the bytes of that block, of the specific block, right? So again, when we say n-way set associative, that's two-way, four-way, eight-way, we want to say that the comparison of the block gonna be two of them simultaneously, four of them simultaneously, and eight of them simultaneously, right? Okay, with those like knowledges you learn in mind, let's solve this problem, okay? Assuming we have a 64K cache in 64-byte blocks, like every block is 64 bytes. And then we do two-way set associative and use least recent use as the replacement. It's write back and write allocate on a write miss. We have the 64-bit virtual address, 40-bit physical address. Can you tell us how many sets we need and how many sets we can have for this cache and how many blocks we can have from this cache? And the number of bits for index and number of bits for block offset. Okay, use 15 minutes to solve this problem. A lot of those information are useless, like least recent use, write back, write allocation, 48-bit virtual address, 40-bit physical address. Those are useless. We only need you to figure out what is the number of sets and number of blocks, as well as the bits for index and the block offset. And this is very close to the binary decoding of the address, right? Okay, please pause the video for 15 minutes. All right, so here's the design we got here. We have, because we have in total 48 bits, so then we have 6-bit for block offset because the block size is 64 bytes. that requires 2 to 6 bits, like 6 bits to identify those 64 bytes. And then because the 2 is set, so 64K divided by the block size. So we have 1024 blocks in total, right? And since we have 2 is set associative, then we have in total 512 sets. We need 9 bits to identify 512 sets. Okay. So then now we solve all the problems. So we have how many sets? 512 sets. How many blocks? 1024 blocks. The bits for index is 9 bits, and the bits for block offset is 6 bits. Then we also give you more design way of understanding this. So since it's 2-way set associativity, we're gonna have to have 2 tables, right? The index gonna be used to identify the blocks from these 2 tables simultaneously, and tag gonna be used to compare the tag simultaneously. And then if it is valid, and then we're gonna get the data, right? Get the data, and then use a multiplexer to output the data by using the block offset, right? Okay. Continue. Since a cache is like a smaller than a cache than the main memory, right? So which block should be replaced when we have a miss? There are a couple of ways, like random or least recently used. Random is like basically, okay, when I mapped this block, and then I'm gonna randomly replace whichever block I want to by using a random number. Well, least recently used means I have to track all the blocks in this set and which one is least recently used. And then I'm gonna replace that one, right? So clearly, least recently used case is gonna give you better performance, like as what we see here. The miss ratio of least recently used is absolutely constantly better than random, no matter the size of the cache or the set associativity of the cache, right? But unfortunately, keeping the least recently used can be very complicated. Okay, because you have to keep track of the access history. Right? Okay, after cache read miss, if there are no empty cache blocks, which block should be removed from the cache? So that's what we exactly answered in the prior slide, right? Which block should be? So as what we said already, it's appealing, least recently used, but it's very hard to implement. A random chosen block is easy to implement, but it doesn't work very well. So people also try least recently used approximation, which you guys can, this can be an extended topic. You guys can search online or come to me. I can send you some documents about that. So we talk a lot about read. What about write? Right? This is very important, very, very important concept. We have said we need we do write back here, right? We see it's a write back memory. What is write back? What is write through? Okay, so it's always standing at the memory perspective. Okay, it's not on the cache perspective. So write through means you write through the cache to the memory. Okay, write back means I only write back to memory when I need to. So for instance, if I'm keep writing to the cache, in write through, you always have to also push that write to the down to the memory. But in write back, you do not have to push it down to the memory. You just have to keep updating the cache until this cache block has to be evicted or invalidated or whatever cases, like changing from exclusive to share, which you're going to talk about a couple of lectures later, then you write the results, the updated results back. So in that case, the cache block can be dirty, like it's not synchronized with the memory, right? So that is the write through versus write back. Sorry, there's a typo here. It's a cache. So additional option that writes to an I-cached address, allocate a new cache line, which we call it write allocate. So there are chances you can have no write allocate, not allocate a cache line for write operation. Even there's a miss for this write. Well, write allocate is opposite to no write allocate. Basically, we allocate a cache line for write miss. Okay, this is another exercise. Assuming a fully set associative write back cache with many cache entries that start empty. So if we have a write 100, write memory 100, read memory 200, write memory 200, write memory 100. If we do not, we have no write allocate, how many misses we have, how many hits we have. If we have write allocate, how many misses we have, how many hits we have. Please pause this video for 15 minutes and try to solve this problem. Okay. So here's the solution. Assuming we have no write allocate, we're gonna have a write miss here, a write miss here, a read miss here, and then we have the hit, right? And then we have a miss. So we have 4 misses and 1 hit. Well, if we do have the write allocate, then we have a miss here, we're gonna have a hit here, we have a miss here, we have a hit here, we have a hit here. So we're gonna have 3 hits because this write triggers this specific memory to be cached. And since we have many cache entries and fully set associativity, so we don't have like conflict between this mem 200 and mem 100. So that's why we have 3 hits and 2 misses. Okay, this is relatively straightforward if you understand the concept, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Okay. Okay, so there's another concept very important, that is write buffers for write-through caches. As we know, writing to cache is fast, but writing to memory is orders of magnitude slower, right? But if we have a lot of writes and you do have the write-through cache, so how do we do the write-through? Typically, what we do is we use buffers. The write buffer means the processor want to write something, it does not have to be synchronized. You just have to put the write in the write buffer so that CPU does not have to stop, right? Why we need a buffer, not a register, like holding a single operation? Because this could be bursts for writes, like a lot of writes. Read after write hazards an issue for write buffers? Yes, absolutely, because you might have a write, it's still waiting in the buffer, but a reading can happen, right? So what we have to do is when we have a read, we have to drain the entire write buffer before we do the first read, okay? The last bullet is the misread. What is misread? Is the total number of misses over the memory access of all the instructions, right? So average memory access time can be the percentage of instruction time and percentage of data access time, right? The time is a hit time plus the instruction misreads multiply miss penalty. Similarly for this one. Okay, great. Well, if you understand this part of this lecture, it's almost you get pretty much about how cache works. And this, I assure you, this is gonna appear in your exams, okay? All right.